This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, a damaging new wave of COVID-19 cases across the developing world continues to hurt emerging market assets. But of course, traders say investors are also looking to the global economic recovery. As a result, today we saw MSCI's index of emerging market stocks rising 0.6% on the day. South Africa's JSE opening weaker but gradually recovering as the day progressed. The market was helped by a handful of big diversified resource stocks. Now, the resource index was up over 1%. However, gold stocks were weaker, and that's despite a fairly steady gold price. Anglo Gold Ashanti down 1.66% on the day. Now, also coming up on today's show, Egypt and Russia agree to resume all flights between them. Billionaire Elon Musk launches a new astronaut team to the International Space Station. And working from home breeds thriving side hustles in South Africa. Now, direct flights between Russia and the Egyptian cities of Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada will resume after more than 5 years. Flights to the resort destinations were suspended after a Russian passenger plane crashed in Sinai in October 2015, killing 224 people. Egypt and Russia have agreed to resume all flights between them in a call between their presidents, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Vladimir Putin. Now, the Egyptian statement did not specify a timeline for the resumption of flights, but Russia's Interfax news agency reported that the flights could resume in the second half of May. Now, the decision to resume flights follows the joint cooperation between the two sides and is based on standards of security. Well, let's get more on this. We're joined by Yasser Hakim. He's in Cairo. Yasser, as always, great to have you on the show. Now, of course, flights to and from Egypt have been suspended for about 5 years now, including to its resort towns. Walk us through the impact this has had on the tourist numbers in the country, and of course, how significant today's decision is for these resort towns.
Yes, Uche, it's had an possible impact, a very hard impact on the tourism market because the Russians were the highest number of visitors in Egypt at over 2 million per year, and that's the highest nationality to come to Egypt during that period when the accident happened and led to a ban on flights from and to Russia. And obviously this led to a big void in the tourism industry because other countries also followed suit back then in 2015, 2016 and 2017 and they followed Russia's suit and they also stopped sending their tourists. The number of tourists dropped by more than half during that period, and it then started to pick up again until 2019 when Egypt had a very good return at $13 billion per year with more than 13.5 million visitors, and that was a good growth without the Russians. So if the Russians had returned back then, it could have been much more, and that's until 2019, the peak, and 2020 was a different story. Uche?
Now, Yasser, back then the main concerns were around security, of course, but today, of course, the travel and tourism industry have to deal with COVID-19 restrictions as well. Give us an update on how the sector has been impacted by the pandemic and certainly how it's responding to the travel and movement restrictions.
Yes, if the issue with Russia has affected the tourism industry, the issue with the COVID-19 has made an even more tougher impact, more dangerous impact on the tourism industry, because around 55% of visitors had shied away when the issue happened with Russia. In Egypt, in the COVID, we're talking about maybe 80% losses. When we're saying in 2019, there were about 13.5 million visitors, raking in around $13 billion. In 2020, we're talking from 13 million visitors to about 3.5 million to 4 million, from around $13 billion income to maximum 4 billion. And so that's a huge drop, which has affected the tourism industry. And when I was talking to tourism experts, they said this is the worst case scenario for them. All the issues before have never affected the tourism industry as much as the COVID-19. Now, there has been a slow recovery based on first the local travelers, Egyptians going to these resorts, the empty resorts, giving them good prices, discounts. So there has been an influx from Egyptians trying to change their habits from traveling abroad to traveling locally, because obviously you can't travel abroad because of the coronavirus. So we're talking 100 million Egyptians, so a few million had been traveling during the holidays to these resorts like Sharm el-Sheikh, Hurghada, Red Sea and Alexandria. And then in the last couple of months, we've seen Egypt target a new market, which is East Europe. We're talking about Ukraine, Croatia, Azerbaijan, some countries that have never really been in the market in Egypt before, and now they're picking up trips to Egypt and helping sustain the tourism industry, or the hotels and the travel companies. And that's been good news for now, until we see a return of the major markets, which is the British, the German, the Italian and the Russian. And we're talking maybe the second half of 2021 when we might see those return, maybe in smaller numbers, but at least we will see an influx for a while that could help support the tourism industry.
Certainly good news. But let's shift focus a little, Yasser. As we mentioned earlier, the decision to resume flights was actually announced during a call between President Sisi and President Putin. They focused then on enhancing bilateral relations between the two countries. Is there anything else interesting that came out of that call?
Yes, two things. First of all, the return of tourism is not just about COVID and trying to overcome the problems with COVID, but obviously security. And when we talk about security, we're talking about, in the last 5 years, Egypt has been going through stages of upgrading its own security system, whether in hotels, in the airport, in the resort towns, and everywhere. And that was the main focus, to try to reach the standard that is accepted not just by the Russians, but by the main markets coming to Egypt, the Europeans, the Asians, and the United States. So this was a main focus of the call, because based on the latest results after tests and visits by delegations from these countries to test the security measures in Egypt, the call discussed that Egypt is now ready to receive those tourists back from the security side. Obviously, the COVID-19 also, there's been a lot of efforts to try to stick to the health measures concerning the COVID-19 to ensure the safety of the visitors. The second point that was discussed during the call is something that doesn't have to do with tourism at all, and we're talking about the COVID vaccine. They talked about and they announced that Egypt and Russia will manufacture the Sputnik vaccine, the Russian Sputnik vaccine, Sputnik 5, here in Cairo, in Egypt, just like Egypt had signed a couple of days ago the final contract to locally manufacture the Sinopharm, the Chinese vaccine. And now, during the call, they also announced that the Sputnik 5, the Russian vaccine, will be also manufactured in Egypt. Those two vaccines will not just be catering to the Egyptian market, but also will be exported to the regional, the African, obviously, neighbors, and Middle East and North Africa. So those were the topics that were discussed during the call between the Egyptian president and his Russian counterparts.
Well, many thanks, Yasser, for those insights. That, of course, is Yasser Hakim joining us in Cairo. Well, let's move on now. China and Egypt have agreed to create a COVID-19 information sharing program. The system aims to facilitate travel between the two nations. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim again with the details.
It will be a QR code-based system that will provide information on the COVID-19 health status of people in China and Egypt.
It eases procedures to check if you have your PRC test or got vaccinated, instead of requesting these papers and documents at the embassies, airports and other places. It's all computerized and easy to access.
The QR code offers another service. If it lights green, it means there are no health issues in the person. If it's red, it means the person needs to be quarantined. This helps authorities to take quick action based on the information provided by the passenger's home country.
The Egyptian government has ratified the deal, described by some as a new mini passport. The documents, which are meant to ease movement between both sides, will also benefit different sectors of the economy. Sectors that are related to travel, such as tourism.
It will not have a direct effect on tourism, but it will help determine what % of residents in the destination city has been vaccinated. The higher the percentage of vaccinations, the more comfortable tourists are to travel these areas.
Businesses would benefit as well.
China is a very important trading and investment partner to Egypt. So many Egyptians travel to China and Chinese come here for business. The QR code would facilitate procedures and travel for them, and this promotes trade. We are in a time of pandemic. Shutting down travel has hurt economies worldwide. The QR code idea will help resume travel safely.
What has helped this initiative go through is the closer Sino-Egyptian ties. Most of the jabs used in the North African country are from China's Sinopharm. Egypt will also begin locally manufacturing Chinese vaccines to cover its over 100 million population and will export to the region. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And now a look at some corporate headlines today. The board of directors at the African Development Bank Group have approved a proposal for the clearance of about $413 million in loan arrears owed by Sudan. Now, this marks a major milestone in the country's re-engagement with the international financial institutions and the global economy. The proposal enables the bank to proceed with clearing Sudan's arrears with the support of the United Kingdom and Sweden. And Mauritius Commercial Bank is facilitating Senegal's endeavor to improve its national electrification rate through a $60 million participation. Now, Senegal has a syndicated project finance facility of about $140 million with a car power ship company. MCB is not only a co-mandated lead arranger, but also has provided the highest loan commitment. The project finance facility has been enabling a car power ship to operate Senegal's 235 megawatt power ship plant along the shores of Dakar since August 2019. Meanwhile, Honda Motor Chief Executive Toshihiro Mibe says the company aims to increase its ratio of electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles to 100% of all sales by 2040. This is in line with the government's green goals. The company expects electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles to account for 40% of sales by 2030 and 80% by 2025 in all major markets. That's including North America and China. And JP Morgan has said it regrets supporting soccer clubs in launching a breakaway European Super League. The plan collapsed due to protests from fans and politicians. JP Morgan provided a $4.2 billion grant to the founding clubs to spend on infrastructure and recovery from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The bank was the sole lender to the new soccer competition, which was masterminded by Real Madrid's president Florentino Perez. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we are heading into a short break now. Do stay with us.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Uche Okoronkwo. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for stronger global cooperation on climate change, saying the world needs to step up compliance with environmental commitments to the UN and the Paris Agreement. He was addressing a two-day US-led summit attended by 40 other world leaders. Here's CGTN's Feng Yile with more.
Chinese President Xi Jinping called for joint efforts in battling climate change as world leaders gathered for an online summit Thursday. The event is seen as an important juncture in the global climate political process before the 26th UN Climate Change Conference postponed last year takes place in November.
We need to work on the basis of international law, follow the principle of equity and justice, and focus on effective actions. We need to uphold the UN-centered international system. We need to comply with the UN framework on climate change and the Paris Agreement, and strive to deliver on the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals.
Xi reaffirmed that China will live up to its carbon emission targets to hit peak by 2030 and achieve neutrality by 2060. This is after the country fulfilled its 2020 target ahead of schedule. And Xi pledged to rein in coal.
Support is being given to pioneers from localities, sectors, and companies. China will strictly control coal-fired power generation projects and strictly limit the increase in coal consumption over the 14th five-year plan period and phase it down in the 15th five-year plan period. We support COP26 in achieving positive outcomes.
The US-led summit also comes as Beijing and Washington have agreed to work together toward concrete actions in climate governance, the result of talks between US climate envoy John Kerry and his Chinese counterpart Xie Zhenhua.
We will continue to have dialogue and exchanges in 8 key areas: decarbonization in industrial and power sectors, development of renewable energy, green and climate-resilient agriculture, energy-saving buildings, green and low-carbon transportation, cooperation on methane and other non-carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions, cooperation on emissions from international aviation and maritime activities, and other recent measures, like reducing coal and gas emissions.
President Xi called on developed countries to support developing countries. As he told European leaders last week, climate change is a common cause of all mankind and shouldn't be a geopolitical bargaining chip. As the world's largest developing country, China is pledging to achieve benchmark goals in a much shorter time frame than most developed countries.
China's 3060 goal poses a major challenge for one of the world's biggest greenhouse gas emitters, but the Chinese president sees it also as a chance to upgrade the economy and a foundation for a sustainable future. Feng Yilei, CGTN, Beijing.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden has recommitted the country to global efforts to address climate change. Biden said he wants to build critical infrastructure to produce and deploy clean technology. CGTN's Nathan King has more from Washington, D.C.
After 4 years of reversing U.S. commitments on climate change, the White House is hoping that this 2-day summit will help the United States reclaim leadership on the environment. U.S. President Joe Biden doesn't just have to convince the world that the U.S. is serious again, but also Americans who are skeptical that climate change is real. This presents a challenge and an opportunity to invest in the future.
The signs are unmistakable. The science is undeniable. But the cost of inaction keeps mounting. The United States isn't waiting. We are resolving to take action. Not only our federal government, but our cities and our states all across our country, small businesses, large corporations, American workers in every field.
As expected, Washington promised to reduce carbon levels by 50 to 52% at 2005 levels by 2030. That's a big jump in commitments. And the news came after intense climate diplomacy by U.S. Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry. His meetings in Shanghai with his Chinese counterparts have once again put China and the U.S. on the same path regarding climate. Japan also promised deeper cuts, but many nations repackaged previous unambitious targets. India and Australia are just 2 nations that experts say need to do much more. Europe is by far the most ambitious regional grouping when it comes to climate and have led the Western world during the recent US absence on the issue. But the EU says they need the US and others to do their part too.
Europe wants to be the first climate neutral continent in the world, but to save the climate, we need the world. We need all major economies to take their responsibility and to turn the transition into an opportunity for all.
National competition when it comes to climate change is actually a good thing, harnessing the power of nationalism to solve one of the globe's biggest problems. But there are other problems too. Poorer countries don't want to pay for what developed countries essentially polluted around the world. And the US population is extremely skeptical and, as we know, politically fickle when it comes to the issue of climate change. It's good to have the US back in the game, but the game is far from won. Nathan King, CGTN, at the White House.
Now, the Africa CDC says the continent's vaccination rollout is behind schedule. The health body said only 0.34% of Africa's population is fully vaccinated. So far, African nations combined have received close to 37 million doses of vaccines. Here's CGTN's Gerum Chala with the details.
New COVID-19 cases remain on the rise in Africa, and the continent has so far recorded a total of 4.4 million cases. The death toll is also getting higher by the week. More than 118,500 people have died so far.
We recorded an overall total of 2,100 new deaths across the continent. That represents a 15% increase compared to the previous week.
So it's the rapid rolling out of vaccination that the continent is now relying on to prevent more death and further disruptions in socio-economic activities. John Kengasong, Director of Africa CDC, says countries are moving ahead with better vaccine acquisition and administration, although the continent remains behind in its plans.
A total of 36.2 million vaccine doses have been acquired by member states, with approximately 15 million doses being administered. That corresponds to a coverage of about 0.8% at the continental level, with 0.34% of population having received a full vaccination regime. So you can see that we are still far away from our target.
What the director there was saying is that Africa has targeted to vaccinate at least 60% of its over 1 billion population. Compared to that plan, the continent has a long way to go in its vaccination efforts. However, with the better vaccination jabbing performance of nations like Nigeria, Rwanda, Seychelles, Morocco and Ghana, experts say it won't be long for Africa to hit its targets. And for that, Africa is standing by to receive several 100 million vaccine doses from across the world. That, of course, includes the Johnson & Johnson jab.
Are we on course on getting the 400 million Johnson & Johnson? Absolutely, yes. We've signed the contracts. We are mobilizing countries to go in and get their doses as much as possible. So I think we are on course for the Johnson & Johnson doses.
Africa's CDC director said the J&J is a convenient one-shot vaccination with a very good efficacy record. Grumjara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Now, South Africa's March inflation rate has surprised the market. It came in on the downside when data was released recently, while headline inflation data for February slowed to 2.9% from 3.2% in January. It accelerated slightly in March. Here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola with the story.
Inflation accelerated moderately but stayed below the midpoint of the Reserve Bank's target band for the 13th month.
Overall, you would say that inflation in South Africa has done remarkably well in an environment where we've had a fairly erratic exchange rate. We've had some other pressures in terms of electricity prices and wages. Overall, inflation still well contained.
What's surprising is how low the inflation number has stayed. And I think that's taken a number of people by surprise. The overwhelming sense, though, is as we head later into the year, into Q3 in particular, we should start to see some of the base effects work out and some of the inflationary pressures from a cost side start to push through.
There are several red flags that are concerning to analysts and economists, including the latest petrol price increase, which isn't in the data.
That, together with some base effects in terms of a low oil and petrol price a year ago, that will tend to push inflation up in the shorter term. So while inflation is clearly under control now, we've got to be mindful that it will tend to move up over the next few months. The other factor is food inflation. Food inflation accelerated a bit to 5.9%. When we look at agriculture and producer food inflation, those numbers are also a little bit elevated.
Analysts are concerned about administrative prices like electricity and utilities, but the outlook remains optimistic.
It's unlikely that we see any material move in interest rates, and that has bearing on the equity market and the bond market. So it looks like the South African Reserve Bank has every reason to stay on hold with interest rates as they are for the foreseeable future.
While the inflation rate did tick up marginally, it's not enough, analysts tell us, for any kind of movement on interest rates from the next Monetary Policy Committee meeting. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Global Business Africa. We're going to take a short break now, but still coming up on the show. SpaceX launches 4 astronauts on NASA mission to space station. And South Korean artists defy COVID-19 by entertaining their fans using 5G technology.
home. No one again he can hold in guns.
Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
The experts, thank you very much for your time now. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are these stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
And a look at other headlines at this hour. At least 120 asylum seekers are feared dead after their boat capsized off the coast of Libya. Now, the shipwreck was found northeast of Tripoli. A distress call was reported on Wednesday morning from a rubber boat with some 130 people on board. Charities and the UN Migration Agency says the migrants were attempting to reach Europe when the tragedy occurred. And thousands of people gathered in Chad's capital, N'Djamena, to pay their respects to the late President Idriss Déby. Amongst the mourners were several heads of state, including French President Emmanuel Macron. Déby's death was announced by the army on Tuesday, a day after he was declared winner for a sixth term in office. His son, Mahamat Idriss Déby, took over power immediately following his father's death. And the African Union's disease control body is urging member nations not to waste COVID-19 vaccines. The Africa CDC says countries should wait for further guidance on recently expired stocks. The statement came as Malawi said it was planning to destroy 16,000 doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca jab, which expired in mid-April. And finally, Uganda is considering reopening its borders to refugees following an influx of illegal entries through porous border points. Uganda's Minister for Disaster, Musa Ekweru, says refugees fleeing violence from the Democratic Republic of Congo pose a risk as they could spread Ebola and COVID-19. And that's a recap of other headlines this hour. Now, U.S. rocket company SpaceX has launched a 4-astronaut team on a flight to the International Space Station. This is the first crew ever propelled into orbit by a rocket booster recycled from a previous space flight. Within 10 minutes of launch, the rocket's second stage had delivered the crew capsule to Earth's orbit, traveling at nearly 17,000 miles per hour. The crew is due to arrive at the space station, which orbits some 400 kilometers above Earth, early Saturday, following a flight of about 23 hours. Now, the mission marks the second operational space station team to be launched by NASA since the U.S. resumed flying astronauts into space last year. It follows a 9-year hiatus. And of course, the mission is a result of NASA's fledgling public-private partnership with SpaceX, the rocket company founded and owned by Elon Musk. Musk is also the CEO of electric car maker Tesla. Well, let's get the latest on that launch from Jagruti Dave. She joins us in Washington, D.C. Great to have you with us, Jagruti. Now, of course, the world has been anticipating this launch quite eagerly. Tell us why there is so much excitement around this launch in particular.
Well, I think it's excitement because they're seeing history in the making. As you say, this is the first time that a recycled rocket has been used to launch astronauts into space. This is the third time SpaceX has sent NASA astronauts into space. And the idea of reusing rockets is very much a central part of NASA's partnership with private companies as they work with SpaceX to send more astronauts into space through Elon Musk's company. Now, from a US perspective, this is exciting for NASA because it lessens their reliance on the Russians to send astronauts into orbit. Elon Musk has been very optimistic about the goal to send astronauts to the surface of the moon by 2024. It would be the first time since the Apollo landings, with Elon Musk suggesting that this could happen even sooner than that. Now, SpaceX has been conducting tests of their new Starship rocket. Several successful tests have been launched, but some of those landings have ended in rather fiery explosions. So I think this is there's a real buzz around this as the next development in the American space program.
Well, Jagruti, they also say that this launch has ushered in a new era in space flight, where we're seeing commercial companies sort of leading the game. Give us some more insight into that.
Yeah, so SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, won a contract with NASA, beating two other companies, one of them including Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin, to send astronauts into space. Now, Elon Musk has overcome a lot of skepticism about his company and the prospects of using a private company to work with NASA and the American space program. So what they're aiming for is another fourth launch of astronauts into orbit by October, and there's the eventual goal of sending a flight to Mars. Now, really what a lot of this program does is the idea of using recycling, of making it efficient and affordable. The idea is that it would allow space travel to be a possibility for everyone, not just astronauts. And so this really, part of the excitement is that I think a lot of people feel that it's one step closer to bringing that into reality and bringing an idea that only has hitherto been written about in science fiction into the real life possibility in the real world.
Quite right, Jagruti. Well, we do have to leave it there. Many thanks for your insight into that. That, of course, is Jagruti Dave joining us there in Washington, D.C. And moving on now, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has appeared at a parliamentary inquiry to defend her decision to lobby for Wirecard in China. That's months before the firm collapsed. She says that she had no reason to assume at the time that there were serious irregularities at the fraudulent payment company. Merkel has become the fourth senior government politician to be questioned since last year, when a $2.3 billion irregularity emerged in the former DAX-listed company. Now, much evidence uncovered by the inquiry suggests that German officials acted in ignorance, although lawmakers believe Wirecard's use of former politicians and intelligence officials for lobbying did help to shield it from critics. Meanwhile, southwest China's Chengdu city has launched its first international industry fair with a theme of Get New Technology First. The event highlights smart manufacturing in 7 different sectors, including metro transit, industrial automation, and robotics. Here's Meng Chengchang reporting.
The Metro Transit Show is a major highlight of the Chengdu International Industry Fair. CIRC, China's state-owned rolling stock manufacturer, presents its latest unmanned metro car model.
This train is equipped with various intelligent detection devices, like automatic obstacle detection and vehicle system detection. It also involves 5G technology for real-time communication and is able to report the vehicle's operating status to the control center.
The global rail giant is also displaying a prototype maglev train with a top speed of 600 kilometers per hour. It marks a major breakthrough for China in high-speed maglev development. Xinzhu Corporation in Sichuan province introduces an embedded maglev transport system developed by German company Max Boogie. We take part in its passenger test run at 160 kilometers per hour.
The design of this embedded maglev system involves smart technologies like wireless transmission and cloud computing. This allows the train to run at a minimum time interval between departures, meaning it can handle more passengers. Compared with other types of maglev systems, it's said to be much safer and can adapt to different weather conditions.
As a result of excessive investment, China has recently tightened up its control over new urban projects involving subways and light rail. The Xinzhu Corporation says that means greater opportunities for maglev.
It is not economical to employ subways for intercity travel, and high-speed rail, due to its large capacity and relatively high cost, is not an optimal choice as well. For the embedded maglev system, the speed of 160 kilometers per hour is enough for 1-hour intercity travel. Besides, it is economical, safe, and environmentally friendly.
The industry fair brings together 600 leading industrial manufacturing companies.
Most of the manufacturing companies showcase their latest products and technologies. They are also making their debut after the pandemic with a focus on industrial solution of intelligent manufacturing.
The industrial automation sector exhibits key technologies like motion control systems, smart sensors, and power transmission.
I think many companies in China now would like to upgrade their systems and their manufacturing lines, and also getting more efficient, getting better quality, and making the brand made in China be more international.
The fair also showcases the latest technologies in fields like robotics, new materials, and energy saving. Known as the world's factory, China tops the world in terms of manufacturing output. And now the country is moving closer toward building a digital factory and achieving smart manufacturing. Meng Qingsheng, CGTN, Chengdu, Sichuan province.
Now, due to COVID-19, live music concerts have become a thing of the past, but that hasn't stopped South Korean artists from engaging with their fans. Adapting to the times, K-pop is now using 5G technology to stream concerts into your home. And many say this could be the future of live music. Here's CGTN's Joseph Kim with more.
K-pop is becoming larger than life. Quite literally. In front of hundreds of thousands of fans, a member of the popular boy band Super Junior appears more than 10 meters tall. That's because this is a live streaming event that integrates mixed reality using 5G technology. Mixed reality is a hybrid of augmented and virtual reality. And these online concerts are expected to become the next big thing for South Korea's entertainment industry.
We are investing in this technology because the world is changing. Through the pandemic, society is changing more and more to where contact-free communication and going beyond reality is quickly becoming the standard. That's why we are finding new ways to communicate and investing in mixed reality.
Since the onset of COVID-19, offline concerts have been far and few between. But with mixed reality, or MR, fans are given a new experience, with some saying it enhances the show's excitement. And even the government is cashing in, renovating entire concert halls exclusively for online events. South Korea believes online concerts are the future, so much so that South Korea's Culture Ministry invested $23 million to make a state-of-the-art facility here. It will be dedicated solely for online K-pop concerts, featuring VR, AR, and even XR using 5G technology. Mixed reality services are becoming an attractive business for 5G content because of the need for high-capacity, high-speed data. Recent reports estimate East Asia's AR market will triple in size over the next 5 years. In this green screen room, more than 100 cameras capture movements and patterns to create lifelike video holograms. My every move is recorded here, and here, and here. But as exciting as this technology may be, there are concerns over the long-term impacts of virtual and augmented reality.
Instead of being face-to-face, the interaction in augmented reality is with a monitor, eliminating human meaning and value, and instead creating a relationship between human and machine. This can lead to antisocial behavior, and neurologically it can affect not only occipital cortex, but it can damage the frontal cortex as well.
Because of these concerns, some experts say there's a need to regulate these technologies. In the meantime, K-pop acts will continue to entertain fans all across the real and virtual world. Joseph Kim for CGTN, Seoul.
And let's shift focus now. Here's a look at commodity markets today. Oil prices rising on hopes that demand will recover as economic growth picked up in Europe and, of course, lockdowns eased. However, traders say prices still saw a weekly loss as major consumer India recorded the world's highest daily total of COVID-19 infections. Meanwhile, gold was also up today, set to post a third straight weekly gain after U.S. President Joe Biden's proposal to hike capital gains tax weighed on U.S. Treasury yields. While, of course, a weaker dollar also bolstered the metals appeal today. Coffee was up again over 2% as the prospect of a tighter supply outlook in 2021 and 2022. And of course, top producer Brazil looks set to harvest a smaller than normal crop. Well, let's take a short break now. Here's a look at what's still to come. Working from home enables employed South Africans to build their side hustles.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Well, let's head to Nigeria now. The country is targeting to grow earnings exporting coconut oil and its byproducts. The country generated about $150 million from exporting the crop in 2020 and is projecting to earn about $250 million this year. Now, as Kelechi Mekalam reports, the crop is also a key income earner for more than 500,000 Nigerian households.
Tens of thousands of coconut stacked in this storehouse in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. The priced commodity is highly sought after both locally and internationally. Having been in the business for over 2 decades, Sani Aliyu is reaping the benefits of the commodity's high demand.
I make a profit of over 200,000 naira daily. Coconut business is lucrative. I could sell a truckload of coconut in a week or at most in 2 weeks.
Hundreds of thousands of Nigerians are raking in millions of dollars from the coconut value chain. For Rosemary Akwash, What started off as a side hustle has now become her main source of income, earning her an average $2,000 monthly from coconut byproducts such as oil, flour, and water.
I had individuals, in Canada, in UK, in US, request for my coconut oil, and I have sold to them. There's actually, the opportunity to sell more. Unfortunately, the size of machine I have don't have that capacity. Some of the challenges basically that I've faced is one, lack of equipment, not necessarily because they are not available, but they are quite expensive, especially with the exchange rate.
Nigeria generated a record $150 million from the export of coconut oil and other byproducts in 2020. The figures are expected to rise to $250 million by the end of 2021. But industry watchers are calling for more government action to leverage on the boom in order to grow the country's GDP.
That's a very welcome development which has immense potential to the economy, immense benefits to strengthen the economy. But the question still lies in the sufficiency of what we're doing, because even as it is, even as we're generating $150 million now, as the records have it for 2020, Nigeria is still, shortchanging itself of over $1 billion revenue annually. We have a potential of generating $1 billion from coconut value chain, coconut exports. But we're still doing $150 million.
Coconut accounts for 10% of agricultural exports from Nigeria. It's currently earning up to 15% of its projected annual revenue. But experts believe it could go up to 50% if the nation ramps up production efforts. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Now, side hustles aren't a new phenomenon, but they have grown considerably since the COVID-19 pandemic hit last year. According to Henley Business, at least 27% of South Africans now have a second job or business. Working from home has made it easier for fully employed workers to operate their own small businesses. Here's CGTN's Julie Shire with more.
Cactus Rose founders Kat Yold and Verona Mudley are both corporate women. Their side hustle started in South Africa's hard lockdown when they extended a helping hand to a family left cash-strapped by the blanket shutdown.
They were teaching prisoners how to make handbags. And because of COVID, everything was locked down. They had a limited amount of leather, and obviously they couldn't go into the prisons, they couldn't sell their items. They were on a farm in Dalmas, no income whatsoever. And Verona was like, oh my God, these bags are beautiful, I want one. And then a friend saw, and then a family member saw, and it grew from there.
The pair got to work, developed a unique collection of costume jewelry and handcrafted leather bags, and partnered with a local producer.
I'm really focusing on assisting the young and upcoming entrepreneurs and giving them a decent product which they can put in the market. Cactus Rose is one of the online shops that I do supply. At this point in time, I've got 8 online shops that I do supply. And what I've found is that there's a lot of people that have gone into the leather industry and the making of products due to them losing their jobs during COVID.
Yold and Mudley initially targeted family and friends. They then marketed their products through social media. Word of Cactus Rose has now got around the country.
It just took off. I think people also, because of the online, a lot of things went online. So Verona did the Instagram posts, I did the Facebook posts, and that generated, because people were at home, it generated an interest and people want to buy. I mean, I think a lot of women missed out on shopping experiences. So I think for them it was a way of still getting something beautiful, and we can deliver it to you by courier.
Balancing work and other activities has become a daily routine for both of these women. Despite being back at the office, Cactus Rose has become a fully fledged business venture, which they hope to grow.
Because it's not impacting our day jobs, but it's a really nice way of starting your own business, and having that side hustle for saving for things that you may never have been able to save for. But I don't think it's just that. I think it's been a huge learning curve for both Verona and I, and we grow every day.
Close to 30% of 15 million working South Africans have an extra source of income. It became very important during the COVID-19 lockdown when jobs were being significantly shed and most workers were stuck at home. The growth of the side hustling can give a significant boost to an economy which is battling a 32% unemployment rate. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And it was all pomp and fanfare in Cameroon's western town of Beya as filmmakers and actors gather for the International Film Festival this week. This comes as the Anglophone region tries to go back to normalcy despite an ongoing secessionist conflict. Now, the event will celebrate some high-profile films, including 2 that have been bought by United States streaming service Netflix. Here's CGTN's Joy Kiruki-Juma taking a look at one of them.
Renee Etta shot the movie The Fisherman's Diary in Limbe in 2019. The drama is about a young Cameroonian girl determined to go to school. It is inspired by the story of Pakistani activist Malala Yousafzai.
I'm informed that there's a girl here by the name of Eka who's been attending classes without her father's permission. I am still talking. No child will step his or her feet on this premises without her parents' consent.
This movie, it has a very, very vital message that talks about girl-child education, which is a very, very sensitive topic that a lot of societies today still go through. So me playing Teacher Bibi, who is this motivational teacher who comes in to bring in light into the life of this girl who is Eka, to achieve her dreams, to go back to school, to achieve an education for herself. That was a big role for me to play.
The film was featured during the Cameroon International Film Festival. The festival was cancelled in 2019 and 2020 because of the conflict between state forces and English-speaking rebels. COVID-19 worsened the situation.
I'm so happy to be here again. I cannot believe I'm seeing all of those people after a long time, more than 2 years, I think. And it's so amazing. I'm so happy. I mean, we're finally back. Kamif is back.
Before the pandemic, we had the crisis. Okay, it shut down a lot of projects, and people were thrown into jail. We still have filmmakers in prison till date. Because their opinions were misunderstood, or their opinions went against one person or the other with the power to put them where.
No, Papa.
At the festival, The Fisherman's Diary is one of 2 Cameroonian films that have been bought by US streaming service Netflix.
I'm so elated, I'm so excited. This is something that has been long coming. We've been waiting for it, and for it to finally materialize, and we have our movies on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and all the big platforms. I could say that's a very, very big breakthrough for the Cameroon film industry, and I'm so happy.
Etta is now counting on the growth of the cinema industry in Cameroon to encourage a younger generation of filmmakers.
Not just for us, but African film industry is growing bigger. We can now comfortably tell our children, if you like cinematography, you want to do films, go ahead and do it, because there is a future, there's a possibility you can make a living out of it. So.
Book, you know, they do anything for woman picking.
What are you doing?
Most films made in Cameroon are made in the English-speaking regions. Cameroon's 2 Western Anglophone regions have been gripped by fighting since 2017.
She's called Malala.
But for now, a fragile calm reigns in Buea during the festival, which runs for a week. Joy Kiruki-Juma, CGTN.
Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of